Hello, friends. My name is Martha Bueno, and I am here with my friend Zach Foster. This is Latin Libertarians. Welcome, welcome. How are you this evening?
I am.
Oh, and Zach's Wi-Fi has been
How are
in
you?
and out. Zach, are we going to have problems with your Wi-Fi again tonight? Apparently so.
Apparently,
Apparently. So, what are we talking about tonight, Zach? Oh, man, seriously? I guess it's my night to do the show then.
regulated internet is getting in my way of doing that. So yeah, this is why companies should have even more stringent competition for internet service instead of these regional government monopolies. Because what I'm through right now, ladies and gentlemen, it's bullshit.
Hey, we don't need to say bad words around these parts. So anyways, tonight we are going to be talking about the war on drugs and its effect on Latin America. It's one of the topics that I particularly love to talk about because it is such a huge deal. And a lot of the reasons of why Hispanics want to come into this country has to do with our war on drugs. So Zach, I hope we have you back. Sort of.
I'm here now.
This is going to be a pain all night long, isn't it? So, Zach, where do you want to start tonight on Hispanics in Latin America coming to the United States because of the war on drugs?
It is an ongoing problem. It's been happening.
All right, this is not working out.
Opinion. Let me try and restart my router real quick. I will be right back.
Sounds good. All right. So while Zach is gone, I'm going to play a quick video. Or actually, let's just talk about why what is happening in the United States with the war on drugs. So we all know that cannabis and all sorts of drugs have been made illegal in this country since the early 1900s. Basically, we are a puritanical society that feels that drugs, for whatever reason, we as adults can't make our own decisions. Not being enough, we've decided that other countries can also not bring drugs into this country. So Latinos tend to be incarcerated at higher rates than white Americans. Just a little pointer, Latinos come from 20 different countries. And so when we reference Latinos, we mean from all of these countries. And we do have Afro Latinos as well. And they tend to have the double disproportionality of being Hispanic and being African American, African Hispanic. I don't know what the right terminology is here. So they are incarcerated at higher rates as well. People from Dominican Republic, Cuban, et cetera, they have those problems, the dual issue with being African American, African Hispanic. I don't know. Again, we need a better word for that. And Zach is not back yet. Give us just a minute with that. So alcohol prohibition was probably the first issue with Mexico and the United States in this war on drugs. And that goes, it's established Mexico's first and oldest drug cartel, which is still happening today. That cartel is still around. And so it is causing a large problem for Latin America. I'm sorry. Oh, here we go. Afro-Latino being used. Thank you. That's a great word. You're right, Caitlin. It's weird to call people African American when they are Hispanic, right? It's not the right word. Who created the war on drugs? Well, so I was of the understanding that it had to do with Anslinger, but actually it goes way further back than just that. And it wasn't just one party. In the United States, we have had an issue with this for quite some time. but I want to say that around the time that Anslinger was there, we already had this issue with the war on drugs. I apologize, guys. I'm trying to figure out what is going on with Zach at the same time. So I'm sorry, I'm going a little back and forth on this. Okay. So what is the big issue with the war on drugs? Well, the biggest issue with it is that it is funding the regime changes in Cuba and Venezuela. This is a huge problem. The fact that you can't get drugs legally in this country, we must buy it from Latin America. It's one of their big cash crops. Everything. Obviously, cannabis now that is legal in the United States is on the decline. We no longer buy it from Mexico the way we used to. Without incriminating anyone, cannabis in the United States, a few years back, we used to get it from Mexico. We used to call it Mexican brick, and it looked exactly like a brick. It was terrible, not the pretty stuff you can get in dispensaries today. The reason we could get that Mexican brick like that is because the market was completely unregulated and it was not real good stuff. Today, Mexican cartels are in the business of trafficking humans as well as other drugs that are still illegal in this country, and they still traffic cannabis, although to a lesser extent. Definitely not what we want to see. And the only way, of course, to end this would be to legalize the drugs in this country so that our pharmaceutical companies or mom and pops could create it themselves. I am going to kill Zach for not coming back. I'm just going to say that right now. So let's go with our first video that we had planned for tonight.
The truck heading towards San Antonio was picked up on April 16th at a U.S. Border Patrol
All right, my apologies for that. So that basically is one of the ways that people are getting into this country. There are many, many ways. Coyotes, which are people who get paid to bring people into this country, are known to bring people in multiples of ways, including over the wall, under the wall, and in trucks and things of this nature. I want to say that I am actually friends with somebody whose child is a coyote that brings people, I guess not over to the United States, but through Latin America. This is a huge business. People pay upwards of $10,000 to come into this country, to get taken through Latin America to this country. And why? Because there's a huge incentive to come here. We have a video from the president of El Salvador explaining what is the big issue, why it is that people come to this country, and there is a huge incentive for them to come here. Let me get that one for you queued up. Let's watch why people come to this country.
Most people leave the country because of two main reasons. if, for example, if here in El Salvador we have better jobs and better security, it's less for incentive. And you can see it in the numbers.
Exactly. We keep creating an incentive for people to come into this country illegally. And of course, as libertarians, I think that a lot of us don't necessarily agree on the legality issue of immigration, but I think we can all agree that immigrants are needed. Currently, there is a lack of workers in this country for farmland. And one of the things that I do is I am a hemp farmer, and I can tell you from being out in the field that there is a severe shortage at this point of workers to come and work the fields. If you drive around where I am, oh, here's Zach, but we're only going to be doing audio with Zach. So let's see. Zach, are you there?
Yes. Hello, fam. I do apologize for that. All right. So I'm going to steal the stage, go on a quick rant real quick. This is the kind of garbage that what happens when the government has the power to give local/regional monopolies to one freaking internet company instead of making the SOBs work for it. This is absolutely all right. I've been having ongoing problems with a particular company. I'm not going to name them in order to reduce or limit the Libertarian Party's liability. But what they are doing is not service. This is absolute extortion. This is why we need to deregulate even further, abolish these ridiculous government monopolies, because this garbage is literally getting in the way of us and our message for freedom and doing this episode so we can make some goddamn Hispanic policy-oriented recommendations to LP candidates /end rant.
All right. Well, it's nice to have you back, even if you are a headless voice.
I am a disembodied voice. I have become one with the system. I am Skynet. Actually, I'm against liberty now. Everybody worships the machine.
Okay. Well, please don't say that ever again. So anyways, I have continued on without you. I've now played both videos, El Salvador's president and people coming into this country. I have the last one to go. Oh, somebody thought we were in Spanish tonight. Tonight we are doing English. We are doing English for Libertarios, Latin Libertarians for the Libertarian Party on Wednesday nights. And we have moved Libertario Hispano to Thursday nights.
All right, so let me comment real quick on some of the stuff that Tucker Carlson was saying in that video clip. There is the promise that there's going to be all these benefits. Someone please show me the federal or local government program where all these services are going to be provided to illegal immigrants. I don't mean services being provided or subcontracted by NGOs or private charities. I'm talking about, no, show me where Uncle Sam is promising to these Guatemalans and Nicaraguans in writing that they're going to get all these welfare state benefits. Because usually it's next to impossible for these folks to actually get benefits until they get at least some type of residency status.
Right. But not only do they not get those benefits, Zach, but there is a lack of workers currently in this country that are doing these jobs. So, you know, everything that they're telling us seems to be the opposite of what's actually going on. I was just saying before you joined us again that I have a farm, and on my drive to the farm, all I see are signs that say we have work. They usually say it in Spanish, tenemos trabajo, and there just aren't enough people applying for these jobs. And that is, I think, more telling of the actual situation than what the government tells us.
So for our closed borders audience, I just want to pose the question to them. Are the illegals coming over here to suck up your tax dollars and use up the welfare state? Or are they coming here to work so hard that they're stealing everybody's job? Would you guys please pick one so that we can counter that consistently? Please just pick one.
Okay, so here we have a comment. They get the benefits when they promise in blood to vote for the Dems for life. Oh, that's cute.
Have you heard of Cubans for Trump? Have you heard of Latinos for Trump? Trust me, man. There's other type of blood. As a matter of fact, the only political institution in which I believe there's been any blood covenant in the last couple of years is the GOP. Sorry, man. That has become Trump's death cult. And whether it's Charlottesville or the Capitol or Thanksgiving dinner, you cannot get a bunch of Trump supporters in the same room without somebody getting shot. It's the damnedest thing.
Okay, then.
So, I mean, we can throw shade at the Democrats all we want, but it's not just a left versus right problem. And also, I refuse to allow immigration to be expropriated for a culture war issue. This is not about a culture war issue. This is about life and death for human beings. And this is also what's good for the U.S. economy. And you know what? A lot of Americans are hiring these folks because it's just what their business needs. It's cheaper. It is what it is.
It's not just cheaper, Zach. Again, as a farmer, I have to disagree. It's not just cheaper. If there were plenty of people that wanted to come work and do the job that these people are doing, I mean, we wouldn't need to hire people from Central America. They just tend to know how to tend to crops. They tend to know how to do the work, and they want to do the work. And yeah, maybe it's cheaper, but not really. I mean, they get paid maybe $400 or $500 a week. So it's not necessarily cheaper. It's cheaper in tax, in the tax benefits that companies pay, because you pay them generally either under the table or cash. And that might be a little cheaper, but it's not actual cheaper labor.
Well, now we're kind of getting into the weeds, because a big factor right there is this under the table work or above board work, or quote unquote legal / regulated / the government checked everybody's papers. Is it that? Also, what's the minimum wage in that particular state? Because what I'm making this comparison off of, for example, is like what you just said. One of these workers could make $400 or $500 a week doing that type of agricultural work, or like construction work. A lot of times, the undocumented folks will get written off as miscellaneous expenses as opposed to labor. Whereas a union shop, a U.S.-born worker would be making $250 a day instead of $100 a day that the undocumented workers get. And so that's the type of numbers that I'm basing my observations on.
Yeah. So in that case, it is much cheaper to hire an illegal worker under the table, of course. And again, with the taxes and the amounts that's paid, it was already cheaper to hire them in the first place rather than hire somebody legally. But anyways, the reasons they come here are multiple. We were going on the drug war as to why they do come here as well. Why do they come here, Zach?
Well, have you guys already seen the firefight video clip?
No, should we play that now? I saved the best for last, I suppose.
All right, let's show them an average day in any city in Mexico.
Let's do it. Finally, I get to share the screen with something other than your not combobulated
disembodied voice.
All right, here we go.
That is absolutely insane.
It is absolutely insane. You are correct.
And
also,
again, that type of thing happens every day.
Huh?
I said also that type of thing happens every day. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that, if not most of that, is fueled primarily by American drug policy. Not entirely, because it's illegal in other places. Other countries have their own war on drugs. Some tied to ours, others totally independent of ours. But the number one demand compared to Europe, Asia, South American countries is the United States. The people spending the most money on drugs are Americans. A lot of those folks are addicts, but the numbers have shown consistently it's recreational drug users. Especially cocaine. Cocaine is still the biggest cash crop. Recreational users. I cannot tell you, when I was working in the nightclub industry in Las Vegas, I don't even have a count of how many times people from other states or other countries would come up to me and they would ask me, "Hey, man, I could get some cocaine." because they come to Las Vegas, and then in Miami too. I've been at Miami parties and Miami clubs, and people ask me, "Hey man, are you from here? Do you know where I can score some coke?" And I've said, "Sorry, dude, I don't have those connections." But the point I'm illustrating, it's people over here that are creating an economic demand, and I hate to quote economic theory in this way, but Bastiat did say, if goods are not crossing borders, then soldiers will. And one thing that the war on drugs has done that's created problems here and in the Americas that, for example, they don't have in places like Amsterdam or in Portugal, where it's either decrim or recreational, is you've got to militarize the situation, because now we've taken something out of legal business. We've taken something out of the realm of people can go inside of a licensed shop and read the product information for the drug that they're about to buy. What we see in American dispensaries, what you see in any drugstore, literally drugstore in Amsterdam in the red light district, you know what you're getting. We're taking that out of legal business. We're putting it in the hands of criminal syndicates, because who else is willing to go against the cops and against other criminals, but hardened criminals? And also, we're taking it out of the courts. No longer can people sue for business disagreements. This is something that they got to solve by violence. And that's primarily because there's such a huge economic demand over here. So
there's a huge economic demand, but you're also failing to see that, the reason that another issue with it, I'm sorry, is that you don't know what's in these drugs, and people are dying more so from the lack of knowing what is in those drugs than from the actual, if it was legal and you were getting a clean drug. Fentanyl is a huge problem, and fentanyl is in the drugs pretty much on purpose.
This is true. Now, here's where things get really complicated. Part of this is due to blowback, which is when one country or people or organization or individual has been aggressed against in some way. So now they're going to get payback. For example, U.S. involvement in the Middle East is what inspired Osama bin Laden to, carry the jihad over against the West, as opposed to just the Soviet Union. Getting involved in things that don't necessarily belong to us. The problem is, though, there are populations that are angry at Americans as a whole. And this has nothing to do with what we have done. You and I have not waged a war on drugs in Latin America, but the damage is done. So there are regimes that hate us. The Cuban government, those people literally hate Americans. We know this. Folks like myself, Kyle Varner, libertarians from other countries, LPs who have been involved with the Cuban libertarians, we know that those people hate us. So the damage is done. They're trying to damage us. The thing is, they know that they're not strong enough to fight us. They cannot beat the United States on the battlefield. So how are they going to hurt us? They're going to try to create as many addicts and as many drug overdoses in this country as possible. This is a fact. This is documented. The Cuban regime has been a major conduit in sending drugs into the United States because they hate us, they want more addicts, and the Cuban government can give protection to the drug traffickers, because in Cuban waters, the U.S. Coast Guard cannot go out and do drug interdiction. Also, the Chinese are sending fentanyl here. I'm not talking about Chinese people, ordinary Chinese shopkeepers. No, our beef is not with them. The Chinese Communist Party hates the United States, and they are sending fentanyl here to try to kill Americans. It's just
go back to Cuba, though. Zach, before you head off to China, go back to Cuba. Cuba uses that drug money to fund its operations, to fund what it does in Venezuela, to fund what it does in the rest of Latin America. The drug war is more than just a drug war.
Yeah, so the CIA and its involvement with drug trafficking in Latin America in the past is not the end of the story. A lot of folks like to harp on that endlessly, but the U.S. was only one of the players in the Game of Thrones that was the Cold War in Latin America. Since its inception in 1959, Cuba has done dozens of military interventions, and they've also helped a lot of different guerrilla groups and drug gangs set up drug trafficking operations. The biggest ones being the FARC and the ELN in Colombia. The same way the United States has created conflicts by training terrorist groups and then unleashing them against people that we think are bad guys. Cuba's doing that too. They are training terrorist groups, teaching them how to do drugs, unleashing them against populations. And also the Cuban government is giving them protections while they run their drugs to Florida so that more Americans can overdose on fentanyl, because ideologically, the Cuban Communist Party still has not gotten over the Bay of Pigs.
It's been a few years. I mean, they are stuck in the past in Cuba, so not surprising.
Yeah, it is what it is. Yeah, they're stuck in the past. But the thing is, that government hates us and they're not letting it go. They're not going to forget about it. And they're using our own drug policy as the murder weapon. Literally, if we just took that demand and brought the supply here to American entrepreneurs, we would take that away from them. We would remove the murder weapon with which these hostile regimes are killing Americans.
Do you see a way, Zach, for Americans to finally accept that we're all adults and that we have the right to decide what we can and can't put in our bodies? What would be the way to achieve that? Because it just seems that every time that we try and legalize or decriminalize drugs, there's always a group of people who stand up and are really loud about how bad drugs are. So what would be, in your mind, the way that we can actually accomplish this?
Number one is one-on-one conversations. Use the Socratic method. When you're talking to people who are opposed to this, just ask them, all right, why are you so heavily opposed? What is so bad? What are you worried about this for? How does this affect you? What do you think is going to happen in your neighborhood? Just get to where their individual fears and irrational fears are as a human. Also, get cops who are against the drug war. There is a wonderful organization called Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, or maybe they changed the name, but LEAP is still the acronym. Literally, retired cops who have seen what the drug war does to people. They make themselves available to speak at places or to at least be interviewed on a live stream, on your podcast. Also, talk to reformed addicts who have been sober for many years and who are sobriety counselors to other people, but who also see how the war on drugs harms people and they're against it, and they can just give you policy-oriented answers for how this specific policy is causing damage to human beings and damage to human life.
That is absolutely correct. I just want to point out that people in the chat are talking about not giving a voting block to the Dem party. It's quite a bit of a misnomer that Hispanics come into this country and are Democrats. As Zach mentioned earlier, there's Latinos for Trump. There's a little bit of everything on both sides. I'm Cuban. The Cuban Americans generally vote Republican. There's over 20 countries when we say Latino. So to ascribe an entire voting block from a group so diverse to one party is wrong. But with that is why Zach and I have been doing this Libertarios Hispanos and now Latin Libertarians, because there are so many Hispanics in this country. There are close to 30 million who can vote, and they don't know that the Libertarian Party is here. So our big push is to make sure that they learn that we're here and that we are active and that they have a home. Most Hispanics that come to this country come here looking for, I'm sorry, Zach again is, are you there? You back?
There.
Okay, you clicked out for a minute. So Hispanics come to this country for many reasons, not necessarily for welfare. As a matter of fact, most of them know that they don't qualify for it. They come here for opportunities. They come here to get away from the situations that they're living back home. So I think that we need to reach out to those people. This constant back and forth that the libertarians have, that we need to end the welfare state first. I think it comes across as uncaring to a lot of people that hear that.
Okay, for starters, which part of the welfare state? Because when they talk about the welfare state, they're talking about things like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, going to immigrants, or the state and local equivalent of those. Which, okay, but what about the welfare to the defense industries? Because defense contracts absolutely are a welfare program. There are entire companies in the defense industry that exist purely because they have Uncle Sam as a customer. as in if they tried selling their stuff to open markets, they would fail. And when we're talking about the welfare state, when you take Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security payments, what the state government spend, what the county and city government spend on the entire welfare state, citizens, legal immigrants, illegal immigrants, we're talking about $50 to $100 billion a year, and it fluctuates. But that's for everybody. Whereas, how many times have we spent $3 to $6 trillion per war in the Middle East? How many times have we spent in the trillions just in the last 20 years? So
way too many times.
To just for what we spent in a few years, maybe 2-3 years in Afghanistan, that would be the entire equivalent of 20 years of the welfare state. So I think people who are arguing that we need to end the welfare state first, I'm going to give those folks the benefit of the doubt that they just haven't done the math of immigrant / loafer or lazy people welfare, because I think that's how they're framing it in their mind. Welfare for people who won't or can't work versus welfare for industries that would not exist if they did not have Uncle Sam as a customer. And we're spending way more money on those. Hey, I think their priorities are just really messed up. And for those who know that we spend more on the warfare state, but they're going to make the welfare state, as in we don't want immigrants here, the number one issue. I think it's really more about culture war than it is about fiscal conservatism. And I find that deeply disturbing and not commendable. It just is what it is.
I agree. I think that a lot of people don't like to say that they welcome Hispanics because, unfortunately,
because you sound like a jerk.
I mean, also a lot of people
I'm just going to give some advice to people. If you have to find all these just be honest. Just tell me you don't want Latinos here because culture war. Just tell it to me. I will lose respect for that person, but I at least have more respect for the honest person than for the racist who lies to me and tries to use manipulated data to lie to me, or even moral arguments to lie to me. One thing I've seen here lately in Southern California, the militant Trump supporters have been writing on their car with chalk or soap or whatever it is that you write on your car with, no more kids in cages. No more kids in cages at the border. Shut down the border, which, okay, their humanitarian concern for something which started under Obama, but they did not care at all under Obama, was ratcheted up under Trump, heavily ratcheted up under the Trump. They defended it under Trump. Biden is continuing that program, except the kids now have more coloring books and more Disney movies to watch inside the cage. So I guess that's somehow better. Now the Trump supporters are disturbed about kids in cages and quote unquote human trafficking. Sorry, man. I see right through that. And that's dishonest. All right. David Duke at least respects you and I enough to be honest about his white nationalism. What a lot of these other folks, if it's not white nationalism, it's culture warrior BS. Sorry, man. On your private property, you have the right to exclude Latinos, but to make public policy for an entire state and say that that's somehow libertarian because your tax dollars, sorry, man, the math just doesn't add up.
Couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. So somebody's asking if you are Latino.
Who's mad? If you're mad, yes, I am Latino. I don't look it, but remember, what is the colonial mother country of Latinos? Let's do a little exercise.
Spain.
Okay, what continent is Spain located in?
Are you asking me or are you asking our audience? Because I think I know where Spain is.
I'm asking our audience, but you're going to have to answer for them.
The Iberian Peninsula in Europe.
Okay, so Spain is from Europe. All right, so while most Latinos are brown, there are some Latinos who are black because remember, there's this thing called the slave trade, and there's these things called banana republics because fruit grows on there. So go back 300 to 400 years, do the math there. On the other side, there's going to be people who still look very much like their ancestors did back in Spain. I happen to be one of them. I have an Anglo last name from my father's side. My mother's family is Mexican. They come from the mountains of northern Chihuahua. I do speak Spanish, even though right now I don't sound Latino, or I don't sound like
You don't
somebody
look Latino,
stereotype
neither
image
Zach,
of Latino.
apparently.
Well,
um,
I'm sorry that I don't. I'm sorry that I don't look enough like people from a Spanish speaking country in Europe.
I mean, I get, I
But
don't know. I guess
everybody who's mad or at least vehemently disagrees with what I've been spouting off on for the last 10 minutes, go ahead and comment. You are allowed to disagree with us. Just to be fair, if what you say is dumb or in bad faith, I'm going to tool on you without naming you, just the argument. But like you're allowed to disagree with us. I will be civil, okay?
they're not mad. They're just curious. I guess they didn't watch our last show where we said where we're from. But in any case,
Okay. If you have not watched the last episode of Latin Libertarians from last Wednesday, go to the LP's YouTube or Facebook page, search for it. It's from exactly 1 week ago.
exactly.
It's a great episode. The Wi-Fi was awesome back then.
Yeah, Zach's Wi-Fi worked last time.
The government granted internet monopoly out here worked for us last week.
And well, since we already went through the history, I am Cuban, Spanish descent, which is also why I guess don't look Hispanic. I don't know. It depends who asks me, but I guess I've gotten a little bit of everything. I am Cuban, and I also lived in Venezuela. So when I speak in Spanish, it's really weird. I have a Venezuelan accent, even though I'm Cuban. I don't know. Whatever.
That's hilarious, but that is true.
Yeah. Yeah. Expansion of LP socialists and centrists in harmony
with libertarian capitalists. I don't know if that's sarcastic or if he's talking about like yay bottom unity. It depends on how people want to get to socialism. I don't care about what somebody's personal beliefs are. I care about their behavior. There are anarcho-syndicalists and a few ANCOMs out there who are genuinely libertarian. They do believe in voluntarism. They do believe in NAP. They just would like to exchange economically differently, but they don't want a state. They don't want people to be forced at gunpoint to do what the failed experiments that we've seen in these other countries. So if they're within NAP and, do no harm, I think their commune is going to fail, but I will support them while they do that. If you want some anarcho-capitalist theory to back this up, there is an article by Murray Rothbard that you can Google called The First Fruits of NAFTA. The First Fruits of NAFTA. And it's from March 1994. And he's talking about how in love he is with the Zapatista guerrilla rebels in Mexico who rose up against the Mexican government. So you got Rothbard going, yay, people fighting against the state. And he explains, ideologically, they are Marxist, but their behavior and their specific complaints have to do with freedom and private property. And, yay for these guys. So there you go. If they were good enough for Rothbard, they're good enough for me. To sum up that point, I don't care about their beliefs. I care about their behavior. Are they behaving libertarian? Then yay.
I guess bottom unity.
If they're behaving libertarian, then all right. All right,
let's get back. I don't know how we got off topic, but going back
somebody asked us a specific question. I hope we answered it.
Yes, I think we have.
Do we got any other viewer questions? Anything juicy before we move on to concrete policy recommendations for our LPs?
Go ahead and move on to concrete policy recommendations.
Okay, so war on drugs. For people who are running for federal office, what are some things that we could do at the federal level that people who are running could say on the campaign trail and actually try to implement it if they get elected?
Are you asking me, or are you going to go ahead and...
Well, it's kind of an open-ended thing. If you want me to wax on philosophical, I suppose I could, but I was trying to share the microphone and not be a jerk. If I'm going to be a disembodied voice and one with the machine, I could at least be courteous.
So for federal, I guess the best policy would be to decriminalize all drugs. I don't know that would be a winning strategy, though.
Bada boom. Well, for starters, leave it to the states. However, if the state, or The state legislatures, I guess, is the best way to say that. If the state legislatures do not want to legalize drugs and more than 50% of the people who show up to vote decide that they don't want to decriminalize or legalize in a vote, then I would encourage people in those states to just do civil disobedience. If you're willing to take the risks with the cops and all that, you know what? God bless people who break laws for crimes with no victims. God bless those people. For other states, if the state wants to decrim, that's cool. If the state wants to legalize and experiment with licensing and letting people actually try something with the businesses, I think that's cool too. I don't think that there should be a one-size-fits-all policy coming from above, even if it has the most libertarian intentions, because something that might work as a policy recommendation for you in Miami and me in Los Angeles might not work for folks in Idaho. Maybe they just don't, they don't have enough of a market in that state to do it legally. I don't know. Maybe they have less people going to prison if they do decrim because you got people now who are committing licensing violations. I don't know. I think there should be a laboratory.
Well, the United States is a laboratory. We have 50 laboratories, and it should, if it worked the way it was supposed to, we should have 50 different experiments going on all at the same time.
Also, more territorial autonomy for Puerto Rico. If Puerto Rico at the territorial government level wants to either legalize or I don't think Uncle Sam should be able to have a say.
I agree. I don't think Uncle Sam should ever have a say.
Now, unfortunately, Uncle Sam does have a say right now because Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory. It's a federal dependency. People keep arguing, well, what about making Puerto Rico a state or making Puerto Rico independent? Well, why can't they keep their autonomy as a territory, but give them real autonomy, not the let's go ask our daddy, Uncle Sam, for permission autonomy, because that's not real autonomy. That is, we will let you do self-government as far as it works for us in Washington. And I think that sucks. I think that sucks immensely. If they want to either decriminalize or legalize it on their own at the territorial level, they should be able to do it. And there you go. That's two different policy alternatives right there, not just for Puerto Rico, but for all the U.S. territories. So if you're running for Congress, bada boom. There's some federal policy recommendation right there.
Peter Miller is saying the Puerto Rican people want statehood. 52% at the 2020 referendum.
Well, that is the Puerto Rican people who believed in the referendum enough to decide that it was important enough to show up and vote. 52% of that specific subsampling of people wants Puerto Rico to become a state. And most of that is because as U.S. citizens, then they do qualify for welfare state stuff at the federal level. I'm just throwing darts in the dark, but I'm betting a lot of people in a very poor area like Puerto Rico, a lot less of them would be trying to be suckling on the federal welfare teat if there was a lot more jobs and businesses opportunities down there. And can you tell me, since you're involved in hemp, but can you tell me about how hemp and or cannabis as an industry is developing over in Puerto Rico?
So as far as I know, in Puerto Rico, both are legal. You need a license in Puerto Rico to grow cannabis. I'm not sure if there's limits on it the way there is here in Florida. To be honest, I'm not very familiar with the cannabis market in Puerto Rico. I think it's a lot freer than it is here in Florida, which is not saying much because here in Florida, it's a complete disaster. But I don't think that there's a whole lot of dispensaries open in Puerto Rico at this point. I don't know how developed the market is. And that's always the problem with these markets. There's so many regulations. I can't, again, speak too much on the Puerto Rican side, but here in Florida, there's 22 companies that can, at this point, grow cannabis. We have 500,000 people now on the state registry, but it's just not going the way the state had anticipated, I think, or at least, maybe that's what they wanted, is they wanted a bottlenecking and a terrible situation. Hemp.
So a marijuana entrepreneur's chances of actually being able to do business in Florida is like 0.000 something.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So
awesome.
I wanted to get into the cannabis industry. not the hemp industry. But here I am in the hemp industry because there's just no way. There were 5 original
Okay,
licenses.
so
Yeah.
every
Disaster.
libertarian running for state level office in the state of Florida, expand the crap out of cannabis licensure because, hey, do you want to create jobs in the barrios where Latinos are living and when there's higher poverty, where there's higher crime, where the war on drugs is ravaging people, just like in predominantly black neighborhoods? Well, there you go. Boom. That's something that will help a lot of Latinos. Expand cannabis licensure, make it easy. Now, to qualify, the libertarian position is you shouldn't need a government license. Okay,
Which I
cool.
agree
You
with
shouldn't,
totally.
but you also
You
have to
shouldn't.
convince a bunch of people in your district to vote for you and give them something that sounds like public policy. So you're in a room with Democrats and you're in a room with Republicans and you're in a room with
That
those
drives
other
me
annoying
crazy, though,
statists
Zach.
who
I
call
know you're
themselves
right.
independents. So you tell them, well, guys, if we make it easier for people to get licensed, the government would be able to keep an eye on things. Meanwhile, people would be creating all these jobs. And oh my gosh, if we just had a really, really low tax rate, then you could send money to schools, but keep the tax rate low so that the people and the economy and reinvestments and blah, blah, blah.
It drives me crazy, Zach. The legislation here on cannabis is insane. People who are low resources can't get the medicine because you have to go to a doctor every 7 months and then apply for a yearly license. So it's
that is ridiculous.
Really, yeah, it is. And there's a cost. So the license itself is about $75, and then to go to a doctor without insurance twice. If every time is at least $150, that's $300, so $375 just to get the state's rights to use cannabis. Let alone that's not, you haven't gotten any cannabis for $375 at that point. So it is very, very unfair. But I also want to mention here in Florida, we had a license set up specifically for a Black farmer. There was supposed to be a license going to Black farmers here in the state of Florida, and that never happened. So even when our state is trying to do the right thing, they mess up terribly. And
that's what happens when you put caps on who can have licenses.
Well, now all of the license holders here in the state of Florida are pretty much Canadian companies. So, there we are. So tonight's show was a little bit of a mixed bag. We are intending to talk more about the drug issues in Latin America, and we kind of got off topic with the issues with the internet. But we are now 50 minutes in, Zach.
Well, the show went on one way or another. Thank you for everybody who bared with it and stuck with us. One last thing I want to say, huge shout out to the government of the UK for opening its doors to 3 million Hong Kong refugees who are fleeing from communism. And huge shout out to the administration of Ivan Duque down in Colombia for opening the door and legalizing 2 million Venezuelans who are refugees from communism. Those are both governments that have fewer resources than ours. Yes, UK has a higher standard of living than Colombia, blah, blah, blah. That's not the point. UK does not have the money and the resources and the power that the United States has today. And if those two countries could do it, we could do it too. And you know what? If we just stop spending trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars on these military adventures in other countries that we're not officially at war with, all of a sudden, the welfare state that the closed border people are so worried about becomes less of a problem.
Agreed totally. Also, I would love to have that same policy here.
There's a federal policy recommendation, libertarian candidates. You're welcome.
Yep. I would love to see the United States open its doors to Hong Kongers. I don't know what we're calling them. And also Latin Americans. We already are. I don't think we were doing it intentionally so much, but we already are. But it would be really nice to be able to, open our doors the way they have.
Absolutely.
So with that, I think we are going to say good night. Thank you all for sticking with us with our technical difficulties. We will be back next week on Wednesday, 9 p.m. for another episode of Latin Libertarians. And if you do speak Spanish, please come join us tomorrow on Libertarios Hispanos. Good night, all.
Absolutely. May the force be with you.